Welcome to the Golden State Real Estate Quest. Today, we're aiming to turn what can feel like, well, maybe some daunting rules and requirements into a really clear, empowering pathway for building a successful career. A career you can genuinely be proud of.
That sounds like a great goal. It's like we're laying the foundation stones, right?
Right.
The absolute bedrock for everything you'll build in this profession.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're tackling a stack of sources you shared. We've got articles, manuals, state resources focusing on something just completely fundamental, not just legally, but for building trust and reputation. We're talking ethics and integrity in California real estate.
And it's quite a mix of materials we've got here. We've got the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics itself, which is central.
Yeah, plus breakdowns and summaries of that code, resources straight from the California Department of Real Estate, the DRE, talking about common violations.
And some really interesting pieces on conflicts of interest, even drawing parallels from other fields like consulting, plus insights on how clear communication actually builds that essential trust.
So our mission today, as we kind of navigate through all this, is really to pull out the most important nuggets, the key insights.
Yeah, we want to help you understand not just the specific rules, although we definitely need to cover those, but also, the spirit behind them, why they exist.
Right. It's about equipping you, the listener, to navigate the, let's face it, sometimes complex landscape of California real estate. Not just correctly, like checking boxes, but with real confidence and unwavering integrity.
Absolutely. Because by the end of this, hopefully, you'll have a much clearer picture of what it truly means to operate with integrity in this business.
And how to spot, maybe even anticipate, and definitely steer clear of common pitfalls. Things like conflicts of interest.
And maybe most importantly, understand why upholding these high ethical standards isn't just about compliance. It's not just about avoiding trouble.
It's about building something lasting, isn't it? A respected career, one built on genuine trust with every single client and every peer you work with.
Precisely. That's the bedrock we're talking about. So, where should we begin?
Okay, let's start with that foundational idea first. When we talk about integrity, ethical practice, especially in real estate where you're dealing with people's big assets, it really does go beyond just the letter of the law, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. There's a fascinating piece in our source stack, If It's Legal, Is It Right? By Andrew Sobel.
Yeah.
That makes this point really effectively.
Yeah, I remember reading that one. It uses examples that kind of stick with you.
It does, like the situation with Elliot Richardson during Watergate,
Yeah.
Nixon's attorney general. He actually resigned, not because he'd broken any law himself.
Right. It was about perception.
Exactly. He believed that for the public to have confidence in the whole investigation, it needed to be perceived as completely independent. So not just actually independent, but appearing independent too. He felt even the appearance of impropriety was damaging enough.
Which is a high standard. And their article also brought up the Hillary Clinton email server example. Again, even if maybe the actions technically complied with rules at that exact moment. The perception just didn't sit right for a lot of people. It created this disconnect, a gap between maybe what was technically allowed and what the public expects as proper, transparent conduct from someone in a position of trust.
So that idea, avoiding the appearance of impropriety, not just the actual thing, how critical is that in real estate?
Oh, it's absolutely critical. Think about it. Your clients are trusting you with enormous decisions, often the biggest financial moves of their lives. Their confidence in you has to be, well, absolute.
Any little hint, right? Any suggestion that your motives might be mixed.
Exactly. Any appearance that you might be prioritizing something else, your commission, a relationship with another party over their best interest, that can just completely shatter the trust. It's not enough to just be honest. You have to operate in a way that's unmistakably, transparently honest to everyone looking.
Which flows right into the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics, because this isn't just like a list of helpful tips. It's a formal document. It's a formal, living document, exactly. A set of binding principles that members, realtors, agree to follow. The sources, like LibreTexts, explain how it defines how members should conduct themselves, not just with clients, but also with other agents and the public in general.
And the history is pretty remarkable too, isn't it? You mentioned that earlier.
It really is. Both LibreTexts and the Bercy Summary highlight this. The NARA code was first adopted way back in 1913.
Wow. 1913, that's over a century ago.
Yeah. Think about that. It makes it one of the very first formal codes of ethical duties ever set up by a business group in the U.S. It tells you a lot about how early on the leaders in this profession took ethical conduct seriously. They knew right from the start that trust was everything.
And the code starts with something pretty powerful, the preamble. The Code of Ethics manual notes it's not technically one of the articles you can get disciplined for violating, but it's described as aspirational.
Deeply aspirational. It sets the whole moral tone. It captures the highest ideals. The LibreText source points out that the preamble actually says, realtors have a grave social responsibility and a patriotic duty to maintain integrity and honor.
That's strong language. Grave social responsibility, patriotic duty.
It elevates the whole thing, doesn't it? Beyond just deals and commissions, it frames the profession as a service to society, grounding all the specific rules that follow in this bigger picture of public good and trust.
It really makes you pause and think about the bigger picture. It's not just about the mechanics of the job. It's about recognizing the impact you have on people's lives, on your community.
Your actions ripple outwards. They affect your client, sure, but also how the public sees the entire real estate profession. It's a call to uphold something larger than yourself.
It's about connecting your work to your own values, too, maybe.
That's a great point. That sense of connectedness, when your professional actions align with your personal sense of right and wrong, that's powerful.
And just to clarify, who exactly does this code apply to?
Good question. The Berksey summary is clear on this. It applies to members of the National Association of Realtors. When you join ARR, you're making a commitment to live by this code.
Okay, let's take a moment here. This feels like the right spot for our ethical compass segment. We need to really underline this. Operating with unwavering integrity isn't just, a nice to have or a way to stay out of trouble.
No, it's absolutely fundamental. It is, without exaggeration, the bedrock. The foundation you build everything else on for a sustainable, respected, and honestly fulfilling career in real estate.
Think about those words we keep using. Integrity, honesty, transparency, professional responsibility. Our sources share these aren't just buzzwords.
And not at all. They are the absolute non-negotiable foundation. They are the tools you use every single day to build those deep, meaningful, long-term relationships with your clients.
Relationships built on trust, where they know you are always, without question, looking out for their best interest.
And it's that foundation that lets you build a reputation you can be genuinely proud of. A reputation for being fair, competent, someone who does what they say they'll do, even when it's tough.
Every email, every phone call, every piece of advice, it all adds up, right? Building that foundation brick by brick.
Exactly. And this sense of operating ethically fosters that connectedness we touched on. It connects you deeply with your client, sure, but also with your peers who hold the same standards. It connects you to your community, boosting public trust.
And importantly, it connects your work life to your personal values. Like you said, when your business practices feel right, when they align with who you are, that's not just ethical, it's empowering. It reduces that stress that comes from feeling, well, out of sync.
It's about becoming that agent people just instinctively trust, the one they send their friends and family to, because they know you put doing the right thing first. That kind of trust, that's the most valuable asset you will ever build.
And it's built one ethical decision, one transparent conversation at a time.
And it's not a destination, right?
Yeah.
It's a continuous practice, a way of being in the business.
Okay. So with that bedrock firmly established in our minds, let's dig into some of the specific ethical obligations. The Code, California rules. Starting with maybe the most critical one, your duty to your clients.
Right. And the core of that duty is the fiduciary relationship. The USI insurance source explains this really clearly. As a real estate agent, you are a fiduciary to your client. Meaning you are legally and ethically bound to act in their best interest, period. Placing their interest above your own, even above the interests of other parties in the deal, like the agent on the other side.
And this relationship is built on your expertise, right? They hire you because you know things they don't.
Precisely. They're relying on you, vulnerable in a way, trusting you to guide them through something complex. Your fiduciary duty means you must use that expertise for their benefit, not to gain an edge for yourself or just for convenience. It's a huge position of trust, much like a lawyer with their client or a financial advisor.
And a huge part of fulfilling that duty is honesty and disclosure.
A cornerstone, absolutely. The Berksey summary hits this hard. You're legally required to disclose details about a property, even negative stuff, even if you think it might kill the deal and cost you your commission.
That's putting the client's interest knowing the facts directly ahead of your own interest getting paid.
Exactly. And the California DRE, they get very specific about this. The most common enforcement violation source points to substantial misrepresentation as a major violation. And it's not just telling outright lies.
What else does it include?
Crucially, it includes failing to disclose material facts, things the client should know.
Okay, define material fact. What qualifies?
Well, generally, it's something a reasonable person would consider important when deciding whether to buy, sell, or lease. So yeah, a leaky roof definitely qualifies.
What else? A boundary dispute? Planned construction nearby?
Yes, all potentially material. A known neighborhood issue, like persistent noise or bad odors. If you know something that could reasonably influence your client's decision about the property or the price, it's very likely a material fact you have to disclose.
This is where that DRE advice comes in, isn't it? The simple but powerful line.
Yes, it's worth saying again. When in doubt, disclose and do it in writing.
And the in writing part is key.
Vital, because oral disclosures, they can be misunderstood, forgotten, disputed later. Putting it in writing creates a clear record. It protects everyone. It ensures your client has clear, documented info to make informed choices. It's not just CYA, it's good practice.
And you can see the link here to that building trust through transparency source. It talks about how open, honest communication builds those long-term relationships.
Reduces uncertainty for clients too, which is huge in real estate. And it builds confidence. Proactively disclosing facts, even the tough ones, actually builds incredible trust. It shows you're genuinely prioritizing their well-being.
It's the total opposite of those pushy sales tactics mentioned in the ethics and sales source, right? Rushing people, glossing over problems.
Exactly. Ethical real estate is about empowering your client with knowledge, not manipulating them through omissions or pressure.
Okay, so that's the duty to clients. What about duties to the public?
Realtors have fundamental duties there too. A big one is fair treatment and building broad public trust.
This brings us to Article 10 of the Code.
Yes, Article 10, referenced in the manual's Appendix 2. It's central. It commits members to providing equal professional service to everyone without discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. All those protected classes.
So treating everyone who seeks your help with the same respect and diligence.
Absolutely. And the source specifically notes this includes not volunteering info about the racial, religious, or ethnic makeup of neighborhoods. That's steering, a form of discrimination. And discrimination, the manual makes clear it's considered a particularly serious violation.
And transparency applies to the public, too.
Definitely. The building trust source reinforces this. Being open and honest in your advertising, your public statements, it builds trust in you and helps the reputation of the whole profession.
What about things like giving opinions on property value, CMAs, BPOs?
Good point. That's another area with a duty to the public. Standard Practice 11-1 in the 2025 Code lays out specific requirements to ensure those opinions are objective and reliable.
Meaning you need to know what you're talking about.
Basically, yes. You need to have the right knowledge about that specific property type, access to relevant data and resources, and be familiar with the geographic area.
And what if you don't have that expertise for a particular property?
Then the code says you must disclose that limitation to the person requesting the opinion, and you have to do it in advance. No pretending.
Okay. And if the opinion isn't for a potential buyer or seller, like for a listing or offer,
then SOP 11-1 gets even more detailed. It requires specific data points and disclosures to make sure the public understands exactly what the opinion is and what its limitations are. It's all about providing accurate, well-supported information.
And I saw something about updates for 2025 regarding photos and videos.
Right. A reflection of changing technology. There's now a specific requirement. You need permission from the listing broker, the owner, the occupant, before you start photographing or videographing inside someone else's listed property. It respects property rights and privacy.
Makes sense. Okay, shifting gears again. What about duties to other realtors, your peers in the business?
Cooperation and respect are the watchwords here. The preamble of the code actually kicks off with the golden rule, do unto others.
Right. Treat others how you want to be treated.
And in practice, that includes cooperating with other agents when it's in the client's best interest. But a really significant obligation here is respecting exclusive agency relationships.
Article 16. This sounds important.
It is. The LibreText source mentions it. Basically, if a property is exclusively listed with broker A, or if a buyer has an exclusive agreement with broker B, your dealings about that client or property must go through broker A or broker B, not directly with their client.
Unless
the client's broker consents, or if the client themselves initiates the contact with you first. But the principle is, don't try to undercut or interfere with existing exclusive contracts. It causes chaos and distrust.
And the code has a mechanism to help prevent accidentally stepping on toes here.
It does. It requires you to be proactive before you provide what the code calls substantive professional services to someone.
Define substantive, more than just a quick chat.
Yeah, things like writing up an offer, showing properties that aren't generally open to the public, presenting a comparative market analysis, CMA. Before you do those things, you must ask the prospect if they are already a party to any exclusive representation agreement.
And if they say yes.
Then you should not knowingly provide those substantive services. Full stop. Unless you get the consent of their current representative, or if the client directs you to proceed, despite their agreement, which is a very tricky situation, ethically and legally, by the way. The rule protects existing relationships and promotes professional courtesy.
The code also mentions avoiding unfair advantage over competitors and unsolicited comments.
Right. Don't try to sabotage your competition unfairly, and refrain from making unsolicited negative comments about other agents. If someone specifically asks for your professional opinion about another practitioner, or if you feel comment is absolutely necessary for some reason, the code says offer it with strict objectivity. No personal attacks, no hidden agendas. Keep it professional.
Okay, this feels like the perfect time for our think like an agent scenario. Let's use that Sally and Harry Santos example from LibreTexts.
Good one. Okay, listener, put yourself in Sally's shoes. You're a realtor. Mr. and Mrs. Lee come into your office, or maybe they call you. You sound eager to buy, but somewhere in the conversation, they mention, maybe just casually, oh yeah, we signed one of those exclusive buyer agreements with Harry Santos, another agent in town, but it hasn't expired yet. Then they immediately start asking you about specific houses and if you can show them places this weekend, kind of hinting they'd prefer working with you now.
So, thinking like an agent, remembering Article 16, what should Sally do the moment she hears about that existing agreement with Harry?
Well, based on the code, she has to ask about existing agreements before providing substantive services. So the instant they mention it, or she asked first and they confirmed it, she needs to hit the brakes on offering those services.
Like showing them homes, writing an offer.
Exactly. She needs to respect that existing relationship with Harry. She should probably explain politely, because you have an exclusive agreement with Harry, my ability to help you right now is limited by the Code of Ethics. She shouldn't show them homes covered by MLS cooperation or draft an offer for them.
Unless she gets Harry's permission first.
Right. Or unless the Lees provide very clear, ideally written direction about their situation, which again gets complicated fast. Her primary ethical path is to respect the contract and either get Harry's consent or direct them back to Harry.
Now, the source scenario goes on. What if Sally ignores Article 16 and starts working with the Lees anyway? Shows them houses, maybe helps write an offer.
Then Harry finds out. He's understandably upset his contract is still valid. He might contact Sally or maybe her supervising broker to complain about the interference.
And the source suggests mediation.
Yeah, Harry might suggest mediation as a first step to resolve the dispute. Which makes sense. Mediation is one of the tools the association offers to help agents sort out disagreements like this, hopefully without needing a formal ethics hearing. This whole scenario just perfectly shows why Article 16 exists and why respecting those exclusives is crucial for professional harmony.
Okay, navigating these relationships is complex. Another major area is conflicts of interest. This sounds like a big one.
It is. Potentially very damaging if mishandled. Let's define it first. What is a conflict of interest? The Balancing Acts and USI fiduciary sources describe it pretty well.
It's when you have competing interests or loyalties, right?
Exactly. Your duty to your client might clash with their own personal financial gain, or your duty to another client, or even a relationship you have with someone else involved in the transaction, like a lender or inspector.
And the danger is that these competing interests could cloud your judgment, compromise your ability to act only for your client.
That's the core risk. Your decisions could be improperly swayed by that other interest or loyalty instead of being solely focused on what's best for your client.
We can learn a lot from other industries here. That Balancing Acts source uses the Enron scandal as a pretty stark example.
Oh yeah, Arthur Andersen, the accounting firm. They were Enron's auditor, a role requiring independence, objectivity, right, to verify the books.
But they were also making a ton of money doing consulting work for Enron.
Exactly, a massive conflict. They had this huge financial incentive from the consulting side to keep Enron happy, which directly compromised their ability to be objective and critical as auditors.
And the result was catastrophic. Enron's fraud went unchecked, the company collapsed, and Arthur Andersen basically dissolved.
It's a dramatic real-world lesson in the severe consequences when conflicts are ignored. It underscores how vital objectivity and independence are, especially when you're in a position of trust.
The consulting source also mentioned other tricky situations, like working for competing clients, confidentiality issues there.
Yeah, and you can see parallels in real estate. Representing multiple buyers interested in the same exact property, or representing both the buyer and the seller in the same deal dual agency, which California allows, but with very strict disclosure and consent rules precisely because of the inherent conflict.
And that Reddit thread on consulting dilemmas had some relatable examples too, right? Like using confidential info from client A to help client B.
Huge breach of trust. Or taking on clients whose business clashes with your own ethics, maybe. Or projects that seem ethically dubious, like consulting solely to help a company fire people more efficiently. These things raise conflict questions.
So bringing it back to real estate, why are conflicts so particularly sensitive here?
It comes back to that fiduciary duty. Your client's best interest isn't just a factor, it must be the paramount factor. Any situation where your personal financial interest or your loyalty to someone else, maybe the other agent, a lender you always recommend, an inspector who's a buddy, even a family member buying or selling, could potentially influence your advice or actions for your client. That's a conflict you have to address head on.
And this is where that idea of avoiding the appearance of impropriety loops back in again, isn't it?
Absolutely critical. Even if you disclose a potential conflict and your client consents, if the whole situation just looks fishy to an outsider, maybe you're pushing hard for your client to use your cousin's inspection company, or you didn't disclose you have a small ownership stake in the property you're recommending. That appearance alone can destroy trust. It damages your reputation, and frankly, it damages the public's view of the whole profession.
So practically speaking, how do agents handle potential conflicts?
Well, the sources mention things like having clear ethical codes, which NAR provides, and regulatory oversight, like the DRE. But for you, the individual agent, transparency is job number one.
Disclose, disclose, disclose.
Pretty much. Openly disclosing any potential conflict to your client is the essential first step. And it needs to be clear, comprehensive disclosure, ideally in writing. Explain what the potential conflict is and how it could possibly affect their interests.
And then get their permission to proceed.
Yes, absolutely vital. Obtain their informed consent. They need to truly understand the situation and agree, in writing is best, to continue working with you despite the potential conflict.
But what if the conflict is just too big, even with disclosure?
That happens. Sometimes a conflict is so significant that you simply cannot fulfill your fiduciary duty properly. In those cases, the ethical and often legally required action is to decline representing that client for that specific transaction, or maybe refer them to another agent who doesn't have the conflict. Protecting your client and your integrity has to come first, even if it means losing a commission. It's tough, but essential for long-term credibility.
Okay, let's put on our California-specific glasses now for our CA corner. We know the narrow code sets the national standard, but the California Department of Real Estate, the DRE, has its own rules and enforcement too.
That's right. The DRE is the state agency responsible for licensing and regulating real estate professionals here in California. Their job is to protect the public. They conduct audits of brokerages, investigate complaints, and take disciplinary action when rules are broken.
So what are some of the common violations the DRE sees? We have those sources on common violations and audit findings. Trust fund handling seems like a big one.
Huge, because it involves client money, earnest deposits, rent collections, security deposits. California law is incredibly strict about how this money must be handled. We don't need to list every regulation number, but agents need to know there are detailed rules.
Covering things like record keeping.
Yes, you need meticulous chronological records of every penny received and disbursed from the trust account. You need separate records for each client or property, each beneficiary. And you absolutely must reconcile your trust account bank statements with your internal records regularly, usually monthly.
Why all the fuss? Seems like a lot of bookkeeping.
It is, but it's crucial. The sources emphasize it's for sound internal control and, most importantly, protecting client funds. Protecting them from being lost, misused, or improperly mixed with the broker's own business or personal money. That's called commingling, and it's a major violation. Client money has to be kept separate and accounted for perfectly.
And there are rules about who can even sign checks on these accounts.
Yes. The DRE requires trust account signatories to be licensed and also bonded or insured. And if that insurance has a deductible, the broker needs to prove they have the financial resources to cover that deductible if there's ever a claim. Again, it's all about safeguarding client money.
Misrepresentation also shows up on the DRE's common violation list, right? Just like with the NAR code.
Exactly. Failing to disclose those material facts is a direct violation of California Business and Professions Code, Section 10176A, specifically mentioned in the DRE sources.
And the DRE's advice is the same.
Yep. Can't say it enough. When in doubt, disclose and do it in writing. Following that simple rule prevents a world of hurt.
What else does the DRE commonly see? Anything about the agent's own background?
Yes, issues related to honesty about one's own past, specifically criminal convictions. Failing to disclose a conviction on your license application, that's a violation. And also, having a conviction that the DRE considers substantially related to the duties of a real estate licensee can lead to license denial or discipline, even if it was disclosed.
So it reinforces that focus on character and integrity needed for the profession. Honesty applies to dealing with regulators, too.
Absolutely. And to really drive home how serious this all is, that DRE First-Time Homebuyers podcast excerpt we reviewed mentioned a specific case. Episode 110, Dishonest Dealings.
Right. That was a tough one to hear about.
It really was. A Southern California agent who defrauded over 100 homebuyers. He did it by completely misrepresenting how safe their earnest money deposits were. Basically ran a scheme to steal their funds.
Just awful. A total betrayal of trust.
Completely. It wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. And the impact on those 100-plus victims, devastating. Losing their life savings, their chance at a home, immense stress. It's a stark, real-world example from the DRE itself showing why these rules matter and the terrible consequences when ethics are thrown out the window.
Okay, so when standards aren't met, when rules are broken, what happens? How are these things enforced? Both NAR and the DRE have systems, right?
They do. Let's talk about an AR system first, detailed in the Code of Ethics and Arbitration Manual. It's designed to be fair, reasonable, and impartial. The goal is to maintain the code's effectiveness and public trust. And a cornerstone is ensuring due process for everyone involved.
So how does it typically start? Someone files a complaint.
Usually, yes. A member of the public or another realtor files a written complaint with the local association of realtors. That complaint first goes to the grievance committee.
And their job is?
A preliminary review. They don't hold hearings or decide guilt. They look at the complaint and ask, if we assume these alleged facts are true, does it look like there might be a violation of the code that needs a formal hearing?
So they can dismiss it.
They can dismiss it if it doesn't state a potential violation. Or, if it's more of a money dispute between agents, they might refer it to arbitration. Or, if it does seem like a potential ethics violation, they refer it to the Professional Standards Committee for a hearing. And there's a time limit, usually 180 days from when the facts could reasonably have been known, to file that complaint.
Okay, so if it goes forward, it lands with a hearing panel from the Professional Standards Committee.
Right. This is where the formal hearing happens. It's kind of like a mini trial, but it's conducted by fellow realtors' experienced members trained in the process. They hear evidence from both sides, decide if the code was actually violated, and if so, they recommend discipline.
And the standard of proof isn't beyond a reasonable doubt like in criminal court?
No, the standard is clear, strong, and convincing evidence. It's a high standard, but lower than criminal court.
What about fairness? What rights do the people involved have?
The manual spells out key due process rights. You have the right to have counsel represent you that could be a lawyer or even another realtor who knows the process. You have the right to present your case, bring relevant evidence, call witnesses.
Can you question the other side?
Absolutely. You have the right to cross-examine the other party and their witnesses. You get to make opening and closing statements. The process encourages everyone to share their evidence in advance, too, to keep things fair and efficient.
What if you think someone on the panel is biased against you?
You have the right to challenge panel members if you have a valid reason to believe they can't be impartial. The goal is a fair hearing.
Okay, so let's say the panel does find a violation occurred. What kind of discipline can they recommend?
There's a whole range outlined in the manual sanctioning guidelines, generally applied based on the severity of the violation.
What's at the lower end?
Things like a letter of warning or a slightly stronger letter of reprimand. These go in your membership file. The panel can also require you to take specific ethics classes, maybe focusing on the area you violated, often beyond the standard training everyone has to do.
And for more serious stuff?
Fines are possible, and they can be substantial. The guidelines mention up to $15,000 per violation. And then there are actions that directly impact your ability to do business. Suspension of your membership rights, including MLS access for a set time, or for the most serious or repeated offenses, even termination of your NRI membership and MLS access altogether.
Wow, termination. That's significant.
It is. There's also probation, where discipline might be imposed but held off unless you violate the code again during the probation period. The manual notes that really egregious stuff, misappropriating funds, like in that DRE case, discrimination, fraud, usually warrants the heavier sanctions like suspension or termination.
Does your past history matter?
Yes, past violations can influence the level of discipline imposed for a current violation, but your history can't be used to decide whether you violated the code in the current case. That decision has to be based only on the facts of the current complaint.
Okay, so that covers ethics enforcement. What about those business disputes between agents? You mentioned mediation and arbitration.
Right. The manual covers those too.
Right.
Mediation is usually the preferred first step for disputes. It's less formal, voluntary in most cases, and involves a neutral mediator helping the agents try to reach their own agreeable solution.
So finding a compromise.
Exactly. If they reach an agreement, they sign a binding resolution agreement. If mediation fails, anything said during mediation generally can't be used against them later in arbitration. It encourages open discussion.
And arbitration is different.
Yes, arbitration is a more formal process, almost like a private court hearing, specifically for resolving certain types of business disputes between realtors, most often commission disagreements. Who gets paid what?
This is where procuring cause comes in.
Precisely. Procuring cause is often the central issue in commission arbitrations. It's a complex concept, but essentially asks which agent was the primary and uninterrupted cause of the sale actually happening? Who really earned that commission? The manual provides guidance on factors the panel should weigh: who first introduced the buyer, were efforts continuous, was there abandonment, things like that.
Can local board rules just say, if X happens, agent Y always wins?
Absolutely not. The manual is very clear. Board rules cannot predetermine the outcome. Each arbitration case must be decided solely on its own specific facts and merits by the hearing panel.
And the arbitration award itself, does it explain the reasoning?
Typically, no. The award usually just states the amounts owed, if any, and who owes it. They generally avoid detailed findings or rationale, partly to prevent creating binding case law for future disputes. The goal is just to resolve that specific dispute based on its facts.
What if someone doesn't pay an arbitration award or follow a mediated agreement?
That usually becomes a matter for the civil courts to enforce, though consistent failure to abide by awards could potentially become a separate ethics issue regarding respect for the process.
Okay. And one last piece on upholding standards, that mandatory ethics training.
Right. Can't forget that. The manual and Berksey source remind us. Completing the required ethics training currently every 4 years for NAR members is a condition of membership. Failure to complete it on time can lead to suspension of membership until you get it done. It's NAR's way of ensuring everyone stays current on their ethical obligations.
Wow, okay. That's a lot of information on rules, enforcement, disputes. How do we take all of this, the code, DRE rules, conflicts, enforcement, and actually use it effectively? This isn't just about avoiding punishment.
Not at all. This is where we shift into our adapt and connect thinking. Understanding and internalizing these principles isn't just a compliance task. It's a powerful tool for building a successful career.
How so?
Well, think about relationships. When you consistently operate with that genuine integrity, transparency, and professional responsibility we talked about, like the building trust and Sobol sources, emphasize clients feel secure, they trust you.
And that trust makes you more adaptable.
Absolutely. When unexpected problems pop up in a deal, which they often do, or when a client has really unique needs or concerns, you can navigate those situations much more effectively if you built that foundation of trust. Clients are far more likely to listen to your advice, trust your judgment, and work with you through challenges if they genuinely believe you have their best interests at heart.
It helps you connect better with diverse client needs.
For sure, because the foundation is solid. And beyond individual clients, consistently upholding these standards builds your professional reputation. It's not just about not having complaints filed against you.
It's about being known as the ethical agent.
Exactly. Being known in your market among peers and the public as reliable, fair, competent. Other agents will respect you, which can make transactions smoother. Clients will refer you without hesitation. That kind of reputation is gold. It's what leads to a truly sustainable career, not just chasing the next deal.
And it connects back to the bigger picture too, right? The profession as a whole.
Yes, that connectedness theme again. When you choose the ethical path, you're not just protecting yourself. You're contributing positively to how the public sees all real estate professionals. You become part of elevating the industry's standards and reputation. Rather than reinforcing negative stereotypes, you're building your business and helping build a better profession.
So ultimately, operating with integrity isn't a burden, it's the pathway.
It's the pathway to building a career you can feel genuinely good about, truly proud of, one client, one transaction, one ethical choice at a time.
Okay, let's try to quickly recap the main points from this deep dive.
We started by establishing that ethics is the absolute bedrock. It goes beyond just legality to encompass integrity, honesty, transparency, and crucially, avoiding even the appearance of impropriety.
We look at the REALTOR Code of Ethics, that historic document from 1913 outlining duties to clients, the public, and peers.
Key duties like the fiduciary obligation client first, always. The critical need for honesty and full disclosure, remembering that DRE mantra. When in doubt, disclose and do it in writing.
Duties to the public include fairness, equal opportunity, no discrimination, and providing accurate, objective information like property value opinions.
And duties to fellow realtors involve cooperation and respecting those exclusive relationships, asking first before providing substantive services, as we saw in the Sally and Harry scenario.
We really dove into conflicts of interest, using examples like Enron, stressing how vital it is to avoid even the appearance of conflict in real estate because of that core fiduciary duty. Disclosure and informed consent are key, but sometimes you just have to walk away.
Then our CA corner focused on DRE rules. Strict trust fund handling is non-negotiable. Misrepresentation and failure to disclose material facts are major violations. And we saw the harsh reality of unethical behavior in the dishonest dealings case.
We covered enforcement too, NAR system with the grievance committee, hearing panels, due process rights, and a range of discipline from warnings to termination.
And we touched on dispute resolution tools, like mediation for finding common ground and arbitration for resolving business disputes like commission fights, often involving procuring cause determinations. Plus, that mandatory ethics training requirement.
And we wrapped it all up by framing this knowledge not as rules to fear, but as essential tools. Tools for building trust, enhancing reputation, adapting to challenges, and contributing positively to the profession.
Yeah, operating ethically isn't a roadblock. It's the very foundation for long-term respected success.
Now here's something to really chew on as we wrap up. A final thought, inspired by some of the ethical leadership ideas in our sources. There's this notion that striving for integrity isn't like finishing a project. It's ongoing.
Like climbing a mountain with no summit. An endless job.
Exactly. It's a continuous journey of learning and self-reflection. So here's the provocative thought for you, the listener. Given that ethical practice is this ongoing journey, this mountain with no fixed top, how will you actively build reflection into your daily work? How will you seek guidance when you feel unsure? How will you commit to continuous learning?
How will you make sure you're not just checking the boxes, not just following rules because you have to, but truly living the spirit of integrity in every single client interaction, day in and day out, really building that bedrock of trust?
It's a powerful question to carry forward.
It really is.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the bedrock of real estate ethics here in California. We really hope this was valuable. We strongly encourage you revisit these sources, review that NAR code, get familiar with the key DRE rules, maybe even mentally walk through some ethical what-if scenarios, and commit consciously to transparency in every interaction.
Absolutely. Your dedication to integrity truly benefits everyone, your clients, your peers, the public, and ultimately yourself. It's the key to sustainable success and, frankly, peace of mind in this demanding field.
Definitely. Please subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. We'll keep building on this foundation. Next time, maybe we'll tackle the complexities of agency relationships in California, or perhaps dive deep into the essential elements of California real estate contracts.
Oh yeah, both of those are absolutely crucial foundational pieces you'll need to master.
For sure. So stay tuned. And if you found this helpful, please share it with others who might be starting out or just need this foundational refresher. Until next time.